අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නායට වටිනා tab computers සහ data දීමනා. අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නායට වටිනා tab computers සහ data දීමනා.
ජලයේ නැවුම් රසයෙන් උණු කර නිවාගත් ජලයට වඩා සුරක්ෂිත වතුර දෙන Unilever Pureit.
Tonight, steady the boat. Economics expert says he expects yesterday's rate hike to be a stabilizing factor.
It will help the Sri Lanka rupee to be stabilized, and at the same time it will discourage the participants to send money through the black market.
Let them be. 5 United Nations human rights experts call on Sri Lanka to uphold the rights to protest and speak out. Ready or not, Finance Minister Sabri says he's prepared for a Herculean effort as India says neighbourly love will prevail. Warning shouts. Thousands descend on Golface to call for the government to quit. As fact-checkers say, don't donate to #for Sri Lanka. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Saturday, the 9th of April 2022.
සුවඳ jasmine සහ vitamin E සාරය සමගින් Navalax White.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, bringing you the latest from across the island and the international stage tonight. This is First at 9 and I'm David Ebert. A group of 5 UN human rights experts have called on the government to not infringe on the rights of the people to protest and express their discontent with the current economic situation in the country. They have also condemned the excessive use of tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters and warned the government that the use of force risks an escalation of tensions. A group of 5 United Nations human rights experts have urged the Sri Lankan government to ensure that the fundamental right of the people to peacefully assemble and express their views is protected. In a statement issued on the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, they have also expressed grave concerns over the proclamation of a state of emergency and a subsequent blocking of social media platforms in the wake of planned mass protests. In the wake of the worsening economic crisis in the country, resulting in shortages of fuel, electricity, medicines and essential food items. The statement also issued a condemnation of what it described as an excessive use of tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters witnessed at some of the protests that have been held. They warned the government that resorting to the use of force against protesters will only jeopardize avenues to express discontent peacefully, risking instead an escalation of tensions. The UN experts are also urging the Sri Lankan government to allow students, human rights defenders and others to protest in a peaceful manner and to freely share their political views and express their discontent both online and offline. The experts have also called on the authorities to engage in constructive and open dialogue with the Sri Lankan people and to implement political reforms and means to lessen the impact of the economic crisis. Meanwhile, the Indian government says that it will continue to assist Sri Lanka through its worst economic crisis and help it recover in line with its neighbourhood first policy and is closely watching the situation in the island. This was the message from India's Minister of External Affairs spokesperson Arindam Bagchi, as well as Indian High Commissioner in Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle. India's High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle, has assured India's fullest support to help Sri Lanka recover from its economic crisis. Speaking at a virtual media briefing to Indian media personnel yesterday, Bagle also sought to quell rumours that Indian military personnel were to be deployed to Sri Lanka. He dismissed the reports as false and added that they have been circulating since the 1st of April. India has to date, since the crisis escalated, provided up to $2.5 billion to Sri Lanka, including currency swaps and credit lines. India's recent provision of a $500 million credit line for purchasing essential commodities is reportedly almost run through. Bagle told media personnel that when India suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were prayers from Sri Lanka, and that when Sri Lanka suffered due to the virus, India helped with medicines and other essentials. He added that India has been in close contact and discussions with the government of Sri Lanka for post-COVID-19 economic recovery, including currency support through swap by extending credit for fuel and food and encouraging Indian investment in Sri Lanka. Finance Minister Sabri is set to lead a delegation including Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and Treasury Secretary KMM Sirivardhana to Washington on the 18th of this month for debt restructuring talks. Speaking to international media today, the finance minister revealed that he faces a Herculean task to avoid Sri Lanka heading towards a hard default by seeking up to $3 billion to tide the island over for the next few months. Following reports that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has refused to accept the resignation of newly appointed Finance Minister Ali Sabri, it now seems that the former Justice Minister will remain in the position for the time being. In an exclusive interview with a foreign media outlet, Sabri labelled his job to avoid Sri Lanka heading towards a hard default as a Herculean task. He revealed that his first task before heading to the International Monetary Fund for talks will be to find a massive $3 billion in bridge financing to tide the island over for the next couple of months. The finance minister added that his first priority is to see that the country can get back to normal supply channels in terms of fuel, gas, drugs and electricity so that the people's uprising can be addressed. Sabri also revealed that he intends to leave for Washington DC on the 18th of April to hold talks with the IMF and see what Sri Lanka's options are in terms of restructuring its debt. The other members of the delegation are Finance Ministry Secretary KMM Sirivardhana and Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe. He also stated that financial and legal advisors will be selected within the next 3 weeks. In addition, Sabri also revealed that the government intends to reach out to ratings agencies with regards to the island's numerous downgrades in the past 2 years in hopes of regaining access to international financial markets. He also pledged to begin implementing a list of recommendations proposed by the IMF, namely a hiking of taxes, a revision of fuel prices to reflect global markets, and take steps to reform loss-making state-owned entities as well in the next 6 months. In the meantime, Sri Lanka is expected to seek another $500 million credit line from India to purchase enough fuel for the next month or so, he added. Further support is also to be sought from the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, as well as from China, the United States, Britain and the Middle East, he stated. China, meanwhile, is still mulling over a request for a $1.5 billion credit line and a syndicated loan of another $1 billion. Now, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, believes that even though the move to raise rates in the central bank was late, it will help restore stability in the short term. Dr. Vijayawardena added that through the increasing of the standing deposit and lending facility rates, the country will be able to eliminate uncertainty of the exchange rate and reduce inflation in the months to come.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced a hike of its standing deposit facility rate and standing lending facility rate by a thumping 700 basis points. As such, the SDFR was raised to 13.5%, while the SLFR rose to 14.5%. The Monetary Board stated that it had decided to go ahead with the move because it had observed inflationary pressures that could further intensify in the period ahead, driven by the build-up of aggregate demand, domestic supply disruptions, exchange rate depreciation, and the elevated prices of commodities globally. The board believes that the move would provide the stability required to prevent an escalation of adverse inflationary expectations, stabilize the exchange rate, and correct market anomalies observed in the interest rate structure. However, will these measures help the CBSL achieve what it hopes to do?
The mega change will serve two purposes. It will actually give a shock to the market, and it will tell the market participants that the central bank is very serious with respect to maintaining the stability of Sri Lanka's rupee. So as a result, the shock treatment will in fact tell the people that the bank is serious, and therefore there is no necessity for them to make any speculations about the future course of the exchange rate. It will help the Sri Lanka rupee to be stabilized around say 300 rupees per US dollar, and at the same time it will discourage the participants to send money through the black market, so the black market could be gradually eliminated. So what it means is that the results might take about 2 to 3 months time with respect to inflation. So the inflation will increase in the next 2 to 3 months time period, but then it will start falling.
Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena also went on to highlight the benefits the move would have.
When the interest rates go up in this manner, the government will have to spend more money to borrow money from the domestic market. The government's interest costs will go up in the future, and as a result, government will have to economize on the expenditure program rather than trying to reduce the interest rates in the country. So it would have the beneficial effect on the budgetary discipline of Sri Lanka. So other than that, banks will have to increase the deposit rates also accordingly. So the depositors will get a higher interest income, and it would again help banks to mobilize deposits from the members of the public rather than depending on the money being lent to them by the central bank.
And we'll be back with more local news right after this short break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, the largest protest of this week took place at Goreface Green in Colombo today, as the protest began attracting hundreds more expressing their frustration towards the government and the economic situation. Meanwhile, the police are calling on the public to help them identify a suspect who was seen setting fire to a police bus during protests outside President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's Mirihana residence on the 31st of last month.
Anti-government protests have continued across the country for over a week as people continue to demand solutions to the current economic crisis. One of the largest protests seen thus far was carried out today in Colombo, as tens of thousands of people gathered at the Goreface Green in Colombo today. Thousands of people representing all sections of society and the business community, including the IT sector, university students, entrepreneurs, businessmen and many others joined the protest. The protests, which began in the morning, have continued to attract hundreds more throughout the day. Some of the protesters who gathered at the Goreface Green had also proceeded to march to the entrance of the presidential secretariat today as well. Meanwhile, a group of differently abled people have also joined the protest at Goreface Green. They say that the hardships they have been facing have been amplified due to the worsening economic crisis and are calling for the government to step down and hand over the reins of power to a more capable group. Further, for the first time, a joint protest march was carried out by state and private university students, which began in Nugegoda today, proceeded towards the Goreface Green as well. Meanwhile, a peaceful protest march was carried out by the Catholic community and civil society groups, demanding justice for the Easter attack victims and for solutions to the economic crisis. The march had begun after the group concluded a prayer service at the gravesite of the victims of the Katuapitiya Church Easter bombing. During the march, the protesters stopped at the St. Sebastian's Church in Katuapitiya for a blessing by the parish priest. After this, the protesters recommenced their march from St. Sebastian's Church and proceeded towards St. Anthony's Church in Kochikade. In the meantime, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit joined the protest that was carried out in Negombo. In the meantime, a group of protesters who joined a protest in Kurunegala last night have reportedly come under attack by a group dressed in black attire. One of the protesters that had suffered serious injuries had been admitted to the Kurunegala Teaching Hospital. In the meantime, the police have requested public assistance to identify and apprehend the suspect who set fire to a police bus during protests near the presidential residence in Mirihana last Thursday. The police have released a sketch of the suspect drawn after analyzing CCTV footage. As such, the police have requested the public to provide any information about the suspect to the Criminal Investigation Department on 011 244 4265 or to the police unit in charge of the investigation 071 859 1755 or 071 859 4929.
Following the highlighting of a questionable fundraising campaign by an organization calling itself the For Sri Lanka Foundation, fact-checking website Watchdog has issued a warning to the public to avoid donating funds to it. The issue arose after some social media users questioned the legitimacy of the foundation and its associated hashtag for Sri Lanka after Sri Lankan singer Yohani shared the fundraising call on her social media pages. The watchdog website, in a message on its site, has advised possible donors to exercise extreme caution when donating to it. The reason cited by the site was the lack of information on where the funds are intended to go and how they plan to be dispersed. The organization's official address in Mission Viejo, California, has raised some serious questions with no result found to prove its existence in the U.S. Inland Revenue Service's list of charities and non-profit organization database. In addition, a search through the largest single open database of companies in the world spanning over 200 million companies, no such company was found to be in operation, it revealed. The website says that they have had no response to requests for the foundation to provide details of its incorporation, board members, and disbursement plan either. Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Commission states that the public will be able to experience a power cut-free Sinhala and Tamil New Year this time around. The Commission added that the people have no need to fear impending power cuts, as there will be no power cuts from the 13th to the 15th of this month.
Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka announced today that power cuts in the country will be limited to just 2 hours today and 1 hour tomorrow. The Commission stated that they could do this because the country has been able to secure the required amounts of fuel needed to provide power and due to the low power consumption expected over the long weekend. As such, areas from A to L will experience 2-hour power cuts from between 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. today, while areas from P to W would experience power interruptions from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Tomorrow, areas A through L and P to W would have a 1-hour power interruption between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. However, the Public Utilities Commission stated that there would be no power cuts on the 13th, 14th and the 15th of this month. Meanwhile, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation stated that plans are underway to import 265,000 metric tons of fuel this month. Chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Sumit Vijayasinghe, stated that the demand for diesel in the country has sharply risen in the past 3 months.
The National Medicines Regulatory Authority has permitted pharmaceutical importers to hike prices by 20% in a move to ease drug shortages faced by hospitals across the country. Hospitals have been forced to curtail routine surgeries and other treatments due to this current shortage.
At the moment, the ongoing foreign exchange crisis in the country has not only affected the country's power sector, but also the country's health sector with a shortage of essential drugs for treatment. The shortages of drugs and other medical equipment have left some hospitals unable to manage routine surgeries and other treatments. In an attempt to bring about a change to the situation, the National Medicines Regulatory Authority has decided to allow importers of pharmaceuticals to increase prices of drugs by 20%. However, the NMRS says that the new price hike will not apply to drugs that have already hiked prices in the last month. In this backdrop, the Government Medical Officers Association members from the Galle district held a media conference to address the difficulties faced by government hospitals.
රජයේ රෝහල් වල අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ඖෂධ සහ ජීවිතාරක්ෂක ඖෂධවල බරපතල හිඟයක් ඇති වෙලා තිනවා. ඒ තවදුරටත් උග්‍ර වෙමින් පවතිනවා. විදුලි බලය ඇනහිටලා තියෙන වෙලාවට ඉන්ධන වල බරපතල හිඟයක් තියෙන නිසා ශල්‍යාගාර වගේ විදුලි අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ස්ථානවල කටයුතු පවත්වාගෙන යාමට අපහසුතාවක් ඇති වෙලා තිනවා. ඒක නිසා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කරන ශල්‍ය කර්ම ප්‍රමාණය පුළුවන් තරම් සීමා කරලා හදිසි අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ශල්‍ය කර්ම පමණක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට සිදු වෙලා තිනවා. රසායනාගාර කටයුතු සඳහා අවශ්‍ය රසායන ද්‍රව්‍ය සහ උපකරණවල හිඟයක් ඇති වෙලා තිනවා. අත්‍යවශ්‍යම රසායනාගාර පරීක්ෂණ පමණක් කරන්න සිදු වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ විදිහට තවදුරටත් ගියොත් රටේ සෞඛ්‍ය සේවාවේ ගුණාත්මකභාවය පවත්වාගෙන යාමට ඉතාම අපහසුතාවක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Now, the central bank has announced that all licensed banks will be open for business at normal banking hours on the 11th and 12th of April. The announcement came after the government declared public holidays on the 2 days in view of the upcoming Sinhala and Tamil New Year. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. We hope you join us tomorrow at the same time. Good night.